Welcome to Echo of Crime YouTube channel. It was 2015 and Rikers Island, New York City's largest correctional complex, was boiling over with chaos. Fights broke out daily. Inmates ruled the cell blocks. Contraband flowed through laundry bags, food deliveries, and even staff hands. For many officers, survival meant looking away. But for one man, Officer Andre Clarke, silence was no longer an option. Clarke had worked at Rikers for almost 10 years, mostly in the George R. Vierno Center, a facility notorious for gang activity. He had seen stabbings, assaults, and officers collapsing under pressure. He'd watched inmates run gambling rings and order attacks with smuggled cell phones, all while administrators pretended nothing was happening. At some point, he stopped asking, "When will this end?" and started asking, "What if I can stop it?" What no one knew was that Clarke had already made contact with an FBI field agent through an old friend from the NYPD. At first, it was just small talk, what the atmosphere inside Rikers was like, how gangs controlled movement, which officers were dirty. But within weeks, the agent asked a question that would change his life forever. "Can you get us proof?" From that moment, Clarke wasn't just a correction officer. He was a confidential informant. The first time he passed information, it was subtle. A report about a cell search gone wrong, with a coded note hidden in the paperwork. The message was clear. The Bloods were coordinating smuggling operations through kitchen workers and a corrupt officer in supply delivery. Days later, the FBI verified the lead, and a major shipment of contraband was intercepted. But each success made things riskier. Inside Rikers, rumors traveled faster than the mail. Inmates started whispering that a snitch was among the guards. Clarke stayed calm, played friendly, and laughed it off. He had learned long ago that surviving Rikers wasn't about strength. It was about reading people. He memorized who stood where, which inmates whispered after roll call, and which officers suddenly had new cars or jewelry. He was mapping the corruption from the inside. By mid-2016, Clarke was living a double life. To his colleagues, he was just another tired officer trying to make it through each shift. To the FBI, he was their most valuable asset, Informant 42C, the only set of eyes and ears inside a jail ruled by gangs. Late at night, he'd drive home to his small apartment in Queens and park in the shadows, constantly checking his mirrors. He'd meet his handler in a diner booth, always at the same time, always at a table facing the door. They'd talk over coffee, coded phrases, subtle gestures, and lists written in invisible ink pens. But the deeper Clarke went, the more dangerous it became. He wasn't just collecting information anymore. He was infiltrating gang communications, pretending to protect certain inmates while quietly feeding their names to federal agents. And then came the night that changed everything. A riot broke out inside the housing unit where Clarke worked. A setup orchestrated by one of the gangs to test whether an officer was working with law enforcement. As the lights went out and shouts filled the block, Clarke realized the unthinkable. The gang was looking for him. Cornered inside the control room, his radio dead and alarms blaring, Clarke made a split-second decision that would define his future. A choice that would either save his life or expose him to everyone he'd betrayed. It was a message, a test by the gangs to find the leak within the system. The lights cut out, radios jammed, and chaos filled the air. Clarke ducked behind the security barrier, clutching his flashlight. He'd trained for fights, lockdowns, and emergencies, but nothing prepared him for this kind of war. By the time backup arrived, 2 inmates were injured, and the security cameras had been mysteriously disabled. Someone inside the staff ranks had tipped off the gangs before the incident began. For Clarke, that confirmed one thing. The corruption reached higher than anyone wanted to admit. The next morning, Clarke met his FBI handler in a diner in Queens. He hadn't slept. His uniform still smelled of smoke. He placed a small folded note on the table and whispered, "They know someone's talking. I'm not safe in there." The agent nodded and slid a small black case across the booth. Inside was a covert recording device, smaller than a lighter, thin enough to hide behind his badge. It was voice-activated and encrypted. "This will record everything. Don't let anyone see it," the agent warned. That was the moment Clarke crossed the line from observer to operative. He He wasn't just passing notes anymore. He was going undercover, inside one of the most dangerous jails in America. Over the next few weeks, Clarke began gathering audio evidence of gang leaders communicating with outside members through contraband cell phones. He learned how corrupt officers smuggled phones inside, hidden in food trays, inside officer lockers, even disguised as cleaning equipment. He recorded conversations where inmates planned attacks, organized contraband drops, and coordinated money transfers through Cash App and prepaid debit cards. The recordings shocked federal investigators. For years, the outside world had believed Rikers was just chaotic, but Clarke's evidence proved it was organized. The facility operated like a small city run by gangs, using compromised officers as couriers. Every shift became a nightmare. Clarke could feel eyes on him, other officers watching too closely, inmates whispering near his post. He learned to mask his fear with boredom, to move like a man who didn't care. He joked when others joked, laughed at things he didn't find funny, and learned to fake indifference. Whispers in hallways, guard-to-guard deals, a code phrase that officers used when they wanted to trade favors with gang leaders. Keep it clean, they'd say, meaning make it look legit. He stored each day's recording in a hidden locker near the staff parking lot, where an FBI tech retrieved it once a week. But as the months passed, Clarke started to notice subtle changes. His locker was being searched more often. His mail came opened. One day, a note appeared under his windshield wiper. "We see you. You don't belong here anymore." He didn't tell the FBI. Not yet. He knew that if he showed fear, they'd smell it immediately. By early 2017, Clarke's wire had recorded enough to justify a major RICO indictment, a federal racketeering case. The FBI had everything they needed: gang hierarchy, corrupt officer names, smuggling routes, even surveillance patterns. But as the case built up, so did the danger. Word spread through Rikers that a rat in uniform had been working with the feds. The gangs put up a $10,000 bounty for information on which officer it was. Clarke's name wasn't out yet, but it was close. His FBI contact urged him to pull out early. Clarke refused. He wanted to finish the job. He told the agent, "If I leave now, they'll think it's me anyway. I might as well make it worth it." That decision would be his breaking point. 1 week later, Clarke caught wind of a new plot, a plan by corrupt officers to help gang members smuggle in a shipment of synthetic drugs through an incoming produce delivery. He wired himself up, went to work, and documented every detail. But that night, when he returned home, a dark SUV followed him from the Rikers Bridge to his block in Queens. He parked his car, pretending not to notice, but his gut told him the truth. He'd been made. For days, he barely slept. He changed his routes to work, switched his car, even kept a small camera running in his apartment hallway at night. But deep down, he knew it was only a matter of time. Rikers Island had a way of finding out everything, even what wasn't meant to be known. Inside the jail, the atmosphere had changed. Conversations stopped when Clarke walked by. Officers who used to chat with him suddenly kept their distance. And one morning, when he clocked in, he found a small X drawn in marker on his locker door, a silent warning that the system had turned on him. By February 2017, the FBI was ready to move. They had more than 300 hours of recordings, dozens of names, and financial records linking Rikers staff to gang operations. But Clarke's safety was slipping fast. That month, an anonymous tip reached the prison's internal affairs office, accusing Clarke of collaborating with outside agencies. Within hours, his locker was searched, his schedule was suspended, and whispers spread across the facility. He called his handler that night, voice shaking. "They know. I can't go back in tomorrow." The agent's reply was simple. "You're done, Andre. It's over. We're pulling you out tonight." Within hours, the FBI arranged a quiet extraction. Clarke was picked up outside his apartment and driven to a safe house under federal protection. For his safety, he would never set foot inside Rikers again. Days later, the operation Clarke helped build went live. Federal agents and NYPD task forces raided several officer residences and supplier drop points. By dawn, 12 correctional officers and 21 gang members were in custody. The charges included bribery, conspiracy, drug smuggling, and obstruction of justice. The evidence, the same recordings Clarke risked his life to collect, became the backbone of a RICO indictment that shook New York's correctional system to its core. In the press briefing, the FBI didn't name him. They referred only to a cooperating correctional officer whose actions made this case possible. But inside Rikers, everyone knew who it was. Clarke was given a new identity, a new home, and a promise of safety. But peace never came. He lived like a ghost, constantly moving, never staying in one city too long. He couldn't contact his old friends, family, or co-workers. His life, once built on rules and discipline, was now defined by silence. He later told investigators during a confidential interview, "You think freedom feels good, but when you can't tell anyone who you are, it's not freedom, it's exile." Despite his isolation, the case he helped build changed everything. After 2018, Rikers Island underwent major federal oversight reforms. New scanning systems, staff audits, and anti-contraband programs were introduced. Federal monitors cited informant-based intelligence as a turning point in cleaning up the system. But for Clarke, there were no medals, no ceremonies, no applause. Only a quiet file in the FBI archives labeled Confidential Source 42C. Years later, investigative journalists pieced together the story. A whistleblower, a hidden wire, an officer who risked everything to bring light into one of America's darkest jails. His name remains sealed, but his impact lives in policy, in oversight, and in the officers who now wear cameras on their uniforms instead of secrets in their hearts. He proved one thing: courage doesn't always look like a badge or a gun. Sometimes it looks like a man who stands alone and tells the truth when no one else will.